What is happening, guys? Cotty Plays here, bringing you another Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel video. And in today's video, I'm going to be bringing you guys another tier list, but this time for the post-November 2022 ban list here in Master Duel, which, guys, it's awesome. Barrier Statue of the Stormwinds is banned, and we have some buffs to some other decks alongside it. So I'm really excited to be bringing you this tier list. So without further ado, let's jump right on into the 5 categories we got. We got Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, High Potential, and Rogue. I think Tier 1 through 3 make a lot of sense. High Potential is going to be a little bit different. This is where I'm shifting things up for my tier list. These are going to be decks that I think have a chance to do a lot in this upcoming format, but have yet to prove themselves. And then Rogue strategies, of course, are ones that I think are just going to be outside the metagame that can make a splash, but it takes a really good pilot or it takes some luck, you know? As you guys can probably see from the decks down here, I've trimmed down the tier list a little bit just for the sake of time, and I've also consolidated some of the different decks or divided the decks into multiple categories for a little bit more clarification. So if I left your deck off the list, that doesn't mean that I think it's terrible, but that means that I think it's either going to be in Rogue or a little bit worse than Rogue. But if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. But without further ado, let's jump right on in. This is going to be 8 axes, but this is also going to be representative of any just generic going second strategy that just abuses just OTKs. So like Numeron, 8 axis, stuff like that. I think this is Rogue. This is going to stay exactly where it's been the entire time. It's fine on ladder. It's pretty good in best of 1 tournaments. It's pretty good in non-side deck tournaments, but it's not going to make too much of an impact outside of that. Adamancipator. Adamancipator has genuinely... I've been putting Adamancipator in tier 3 because I think it has the potential to be a tier 3 deck, but it has not performed like a tier 3 deck in months. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to shift this up a little bit. I'm going to put this in high potential. Now, I don't think that just because this is in high potential means it's worse than tier 3 or worse than even tier 2 necessarily, but I think that it needs to prove itself in order for it to be up there, but I know with all of my heart that it has the ability to do so. Adventure Phantom Knights. I think with the nerf to Floowandereeze, this is going to regain its spot in tier 1. I think there could be an argument for it being tier 1 all along, but last time I dropped it down to tier 2. But I think with the meta sort of shifting more to, it's going to be more of a combo-centric meta now that Flu is gone. Not gone, but, hurt. Then we're going to see decks like this start to, become a lot better. This right here is going to be Adventure Zodiac Tri-Brigade, so Tri-Zoo with the Adventure engine. I think that's the best way to play the Tri-Brigade Zodiac deck, in my opinion. I think this is a tier 3 deck. I think you can make an argument that as a tier 2 deck, but it hasn't performed like that in a very long time, and I think that's because of one of 2 reasons. One, because people are sick and tired of playing Tri-Brigade, because it's been out for so long and it's been good for so long. Or 2, just because people are kind of like, hey, the other Tri-Brigade variants are out, they're more fun to play, or they're potentially better, whatever it might be. So for whatever that reason, I think this has been seeing a dip in power level. So I'm going to put it where it's been performing, and that's at the tier 3 level, but I do think this has the potential to be a tier 2 deck, but for now, leave it at tier 3. Virtual World, I want to say high potential on this, because the in-boards that this deck can make are really insane. This deck has access to, for one, Beatrice, which is one of the best cards ever printed. It's got access to all the level 9 synchros, which is really, really powerful. You can rip multiple cards out of your opponent's hands with Gotems if you decide to play it. Not MX Saber, but just XX Saber Gotems, I think that's how you say it. That's insane. You've also got access with the Adventure package, which is really, really good. You have access to Fairytale Snow, to Scythe Locking, to Baron to Floor, the level 10 Sword Soul Synchro. So much utility this deck has. I think it's got really high potential, and I think if people continue to play this deck in the current format, we could see this rise all the way up to tier 2, but right now I'm going to leave it at high potential because it doesn't have enough players playing it at the highest level for it to be truly considered a top tier deck. I've been ranking it at Rogue for a while now, but I think I've been sleeping on this strategy. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Ignister. I think Ignister just kind of cemented itself as a tier 3 deck. And again, really quickly, I want to go ahead and say high potential does not mean worse than tier 3, tier 2, whatever. It just means that it hasn't performed like those decks have, but it has the potential to do so. So just putting that out there for anyone who's going to get frustrated in the comment section below about why'd you put Adamancipator not in tier 3 or whatever. It could be in tier 2 or tier 3, right? So anyways, moving on. At Ignister, I think this has kind of cemented itself as a tier 3 deck. It's been topping left and right. It's been winning tournaments. It's been doing great things. But that being said, it still has a lot of flaws with the strategy. It's very susceptible to, well, one well-timed Ash Blossom Imperm or Veiler can just completely just end their turn, which that can be said for a lot of decks, right? But it can really hurt this deck, and it needs so many different pieces in its hand to be able to play through hand traps like that. It's very bad against Nibiru. It's very bad when your opponent actually has a counter to your towers, or in like a best of 3 side deck scenario, like this deck just gets significantly worse. But despite that, it still performs great, and I think tier 3 is a fine place for it. Branded Despia, this is still a tier 1 deck. There's no debating it. This is arguably the best deck in the game right now. I would argue that it probably is in the current format, especially now that Flu is hit like it is. I don't know if there's really anything that can like match the pure power of Sword Soul and of Despia, but yeah, I think Despia has kind of just proven itself to be the best deck or the second best deck in the game. Branded Eldlich. This is going to be the first of 2 Eldlich variants I have on the list. I'm going to put Branded Eldlich here in Rogue. I think if you're going to play Eldlich, it's tough. It's really tough because I don't know which version is better of Eldlich, to be honest with you, but I don't think that Branded Eldlich is the way. I think if you're going to play branded cards, just play Branded Despia, right? Or play another version of Branded that's just more consistent than this. This seems like it just does everything Despia does with like a little bit better grind game, but not that much better because the Eldlich cards, and a little bit better going first, I guess. I don't know. It's hard to say. It's not as good going second. Its grind game is really not that much better. It's just a different deck. It really is, but it just tries to play the like branded cards with the Floodgates and with the Eldlich cards, and it works, but it just doesn't work as good as Branded Despia. So stick with Branded Despia if you want to play it, but if you do like the Eldlich cards, this is a very fun way to play those. I will say that. I enjoy it. This is going to be Branded Invoked. It's probably going to be primarily branded and with a little bit of Invoked, but I think this has honestly high potential because it's going to be a larger deck. It's going to be a larger deck count. It's probably going to be 50, 60 cards, which is bad and good in some situations. Despia can already operate at 50 cards pretty easily and still, perform at a very high level. And I think adding the Invoked engine in there is going to give you a few different things. It's going to give you another really powerful normal summon, which is good. It's also going to make your fusion spells way better because you're going to have Magical Meltdown. It lets you play a card like Terraforming, which can now search both the Meltdown and the Despia field spell, which is of course already searchable through like Aliber and stuff like that, but it's going to make it more searchable, which is more searching is better. And it gives you access to like Omni Negate cards. It's like, pseudo Omni Negate cards like Mechaba. So I think there's a lot of potential here. And I think if people started actually experimenting with this deck, we could see it creep into the tier 3, maybe even tier 2 category. But as of now, I'm going to leave it in high potential because it's very far off from being proven. It would be nice if we could get multiple Nadir Servants. Then this deck, I think, would be a lot better. But also just any Invoke strategy would be better, right? Branded Thunder Dragons. Guys, I always want to put this deck in high potential. Because I think it has high potential. I really, really do. I think we could see this deck actually pop off. You know what? Actually, I'm gonna scratch that. This is going in Rogue. The reason being is because I think that it does not add enough to the branded strategy. It sort of conflicts with the branded strategy in a way because it adds cards into the deck that need other cards to really function very efficiently. So in order to get your Thunder Dragon stuff rolling, you need like multiple cards to do so. Granted, Branded Fusion can kind of just like a 1-card starter for your Thunder Dragon stuff. But the reason I separate this so much from the Branded Invoked is because the Invoked engine is going to be a small engine, like maybe like a 6-7 card engine that you put into a deck, into the branded deck. That's just going to make the strategy more well-rounded, whereas you're going to be putting the branded stuff into the Thunder Dragon deck, trying to make Thunder Dragon better. And yes, it's going to make that better, but it's not going to make it like good enough to be top tier. I hope that makes sense. But moving on to dinos. I think dinos are... I'm going to put dinos in the high potential category because I think this deck's better than Rogue. I really, really do. And it's because it's got such a good Sword Soul matchup and such a good... Well, I wouldn't say such a good, but a very solid Despia matchup. Miscellaneous Sword is absolutely incredible going second. It's going to be allowing you to break boards like it's nobody's business. It's very good into Scythe locks because you really don't need your extra deck. It is nice to have your extra deck to make like your Link Karibo and stuff like that, to make your, and like some other links to make your evolution pill more live, but it doesn't need that stuff because you play non-dinos that you can just banish for the double evolution pill anyway. So there's still ways to just play through and just plow through boards with this deck, and I think it's in a really good spot right now. I think we could honestly see this deck creep up into the tier 3, tier 2 category if people started to take it seriously. However, the thing is, people have to take this deck seriously, and once people start taking this deck seriously, I don't know where that's going to leave it as far as like competitive viability goes, because people start preparing for dinos a little bit better. But right now, I think it's high potential. Dragon Link, I'm going to be bold, and I'm going to say that Dragon Link is finally in the tier 1 category. Dragon Link's biggest weakness right now is... But prior to this, Dragon Link had really 3 things, I think, keeping it out of like the best deck category. One was Arch Nemesis Protoss, which is running around like crazy because Sword Soul Tinny is one of the most powerful and popular decks in the game, arguably the most popular deck, and arguably the most powerful as well, right up there with Branded Despia. Protoss kind of FTKs the deck. Protoss Calling Dark is just GG against dragons. And then also Scythe Lock is very strong, so the Adventure Phantom Knights have the ability to Scythe Lock. They're not the only deck that can do it, but they do it the most consistently. It's really, really good, and it's really hard to beat that as dragons because you need to see multiple combo pieces for your deck that can just extend and just make a wall or like get to levy in some way to start popping some cards, and it's just really difficult. More than likely, you're just going to lose in the next turn anyways. So it's just hard to play through a Scythe if you're not able to stop it with a Call by the Grave or Droplet or something like that. And also, Barrier Statue. But now Barrier Statue's gone. So where does that leave the format? Well, it definitely means that we're still going to be seeing Protoss a lot. It means that we're still going to be seeing Scythe Lock a lot. But we're going to be seeing less of those because there's going to be... We're going to see less counters to Dragon Link overall because Flunder is gone. And I think because of that, we could see the Dragon Link step up in that tier 1 category. Now, if this starts getting played like a tier 1 deck, it automatically gets worse because you're not going to be able to resolve grass as much, people are going to know how to play against it better, and it could quickly slip back down to tier 2. But for the moment, I think we're going to say it's tier 1. Hopefully I'm not overhyping this because you guys know I love my dragons. Heroes, I actually think that Heroes have some pretty good potential, to be honest with you. Masked Hero Darklaw is absolutely insane. It's ridiculous how good that card is. And it's going to just continue to get better. And this deck just makes Darklaw, makes DPE, makes Plasma like it's nobody's business. And any deck that can do that, I think it's got some potential. Now, this might be a bit bold. I think it might be a bit of a bold take. But I'm going to say this has got high potential in the current format because now, all of a sudden, with Flunder going down, that anti-meta, quote-unquote, deck is not as clear. And if we start seeing like Darklaw Stun or Plasma Stun come into the format, I think we could see some damage happening with Heroes. Now, granted, when you end on Nibiru token, that is quite unfortunate. And that can happen with Heroes, but Nibiru's not super popular right now. Drytron... I think Drytron is just a clear tier 3 strategy. I don't think it's got high potential, to be honest with you. I actually would rank it lower than some of these decks. Like mainly like these 4 probably right now. But these decks just haven't proven themselves. Drytron consistently does fine. But yeah, it just does fine. It's not consistent enough, and it's not like... It needs Benton back for it to be any more than tier 3, I think. So, I don't know. Drytron is just weird. It's in a weird place because it's so good when it goes, but it's so bad when it doesn't. And yeah, we're just kind of in that phase where Drytron really can't be better than tier 3 because you can't consistently do amazing with it throughout the entire course of the tournament. Floodgate Eldlich. So, yeah. Floodgate Eldlich, this is Rogue. I think it's technically worse than the branded Eldlich, honestly. I know I said I wasn't sure earlier, but I think that it is because all the floodgates are hit, which is good, which is objectively a good thing in my opinion. I like that, but I do think that it makes this deck slightly worse than the branded version or the zombie world version, which is not going to be on this tier list. Sorry about that. But yeah, I think this is just missing something. You got to play more interactive traps now, which means your advantage is just going to go out the window a lot faster with a deck like this. So that's not good. And usually you're going to, like, let's say you see a skill drain. Previously, if your opponent outed a skill drain, they were like, okay, shoot, they probably have another one. But now it's like, all right, do they really have another one? Nah, I'm just going to keep going. Same thing with like Rivalry, same thing with Gozen, same thing with Anti-Spell, same thing with all that stuff. They're all at 2 now, so it's just tough for a deck like this to fully operate at full power. Which is why I think that the branded version might be the best version, because it adds multiple lines of play, and it doesn't make you so susceptible to certain things. But you do become more susceptible to things you weren't susceptible to at first, like hand traps. Flunder! Yay! Everybody's favorite deck. We are all so glad that Barrier got the axe. Now, I just wish they banned that stupid Penguin too, and all the other cards in this deck. No, I'm just kidding. To be honest with you guys, I still think this is going to be a tier 2 deck. Maybe tier 3 at the worst, but this might be bold. This might be too optimistic or pessimistic for me, but I don't think we're going to see this deck out of the meta. Going first with this deck, ending on Impin and potentially a Harpy's Featherstorm, like, what do you do? Like, you still lose, right? You still get Rized, you still get Apex Avion, you still get just controlled out of the game. And going second, if this deck's able to break your board, it puts itself in such a good position because its engine is rolling that it's just not going to be able to lose advantage and lose the game. So, although I don't think it's going to be as powerful as it was before, I think it's going to be like a really, really good sleeper pick early on in this format because no one's going to be expecting you to play it. And over time, over the course of the next month, I think this is going to rise back up from probably here, which people think it's here, all the way up to like tier 3, tier 2 range. So I'm going to leave it in tier 2, but I hope I'm wrong, and I hope this is just, off the tier list. I hope it's just not in the metagame anymore, but I still think it's going to be. Invoked Shaddoll Dogmatica. I think this is pretty bad, to be honest with you guys. I think it's probably one of the worst decks on this list. The reason I wanted to put it on here is because I wanted to talk about the potential of it with the 3 meltdowns. I don't think a 3rd meltdown makes this deck better. I think Dear Servant coming back to 2 or 3 would make this deck better, but we simply didn't get that. So I think it's going to continue to be a rogue strategy. Winda is still really nice. Winda Mechaba is still really nice. But going second, it's not very good. It has to open hand traps to be good going second. And I don't know. It's just not as good as splashing the Shaddoll engine or the Invoked engine or the Dogmatica engine into branded Despia. My opinion. So, Evil Twin, Live Twin. I think Rogue is a really good spot for this. You could make the argument that there's potential here, but I don't really think that it is. The deck's pretty solved. The deck's like, everyone kind of knows what this deck does, and it doesn't really have an FTK. It doesn't really have a way of just outright just beating anything in the game. Its way of winning is controlling resources, out-resourcing your opponent with hand traps, having really good follow-up, having really good just like consistent turns, and just slowly kind of winning the game. That's fine. Like, the strategy works. You can win tournaments with this. We've seen it happen. You can do very well in tournaments, but I don't think you're going to be bringing this into an event thinking this is clearly the best deck in the game, right? Or clearly a top tier deck. You're going to bring it in with like the hopes of like outplaying your opponents, slowly just outgrinding your opponents, stuff like that. But again, that's just my opinion. Let me know in the comment section what you guys think. Madolche, I think Madolche in the right hands, this deck is tier 3, I think. But in the scope of the entire metagame, I think it's a rogue deck. Kind of similar to Live Twin, but they're not very similar decks. But Madolche, it can pop off, and when it pops off, it can kind of just destroy anything, which is really nice. It can play the Earth Barrier statue. I don't know why a lot of people don't play it. I think I probably would if I was doing it. But yeah, there's a lot of potential here. A good pilot can do good, as we've always seen. And yeah, I mean, I think Rogue is just a fine place for it. It's pretty consistent. It's usually where I have it on these lists. Marincess, I think Marincess is probably a tier 3 deck. Right here with that Ignister, maybe a little bit better. I think you might be able to make the argument that it's tier 2, but I think it is tier 3. I think the reason I put this at tier 2 last time was because I think it's clearly better than that Ignister. And I do agree with that. But I don't know if it's a whole tier better, and I think that was kind of pointed out in the comment section of the last one, was like, hey, I agree with you that Salad's the best, Marincess is the second best, Ignister is the third best, but I disagree with where you put them. And after doing some critical thinking about it, I think you guys were probably right on the money with that. I'll show you guys in a second where I put Salad, but I think it's going to be, I think Marincess is just a tier 3 deck that's better than another tier 3 deck. Orcust. Guys, I'm going to be bold. I think Orcust has got some potential, and this is only a little bit of copium or hopium or whatever you want to call it. I want Orcust to be good so bad because this deck is so freaking cool, but I'm a little scared that it's not going to be good. But we're going to say it's high potential because we can play on turn 3 now, unlike before, with multiple Galateas, which is really great. So we got 2 Galateas now, we got 2 Harpoors, and we got 1 Gearsu. If we get a second Gearsu, we got to start talking here, right? But I think if we're playing, like, we could play kind of like a danger package. We could play like a danger Orcust package, abusing like curious lines. Maybe we could make something happen. I don't know. This could be really good going first because you can go curious, you can go into the Griffin, you can set some stuff to set like a floodgate to your side of the field. We can make some stuff happen with Orcust. And I think I'm going to work on an Orcust strategy for you guys, but I really hope I'm not completely off with this. I hope it's good because I've always been putting this deck in why'd you craft that? Or like, what are you doing, dude? Or like, get it out of here. This deck sucks. But now that we have 2 Galatea, we got some grind game back. I think there's some potential here. At least some potential to make it to the rogue category. But we're going to put it in potential right now. All right. Pendulum Magicians. To be honest with you, I think Pendulum Magicians kind of cemented itself as a tier 2 deck. And I know this probably sounds crazy to a lot of people, but it really has. And this ban list only helped it. Losing, like Flunder getting hit, Flunder losing their Floodgate, that's really big for this. Because it makes this deck better. Also, Anti-Spell going to 2 is a buff for this deck, not because a lot of people are playing Anti-Spell, but because when people do play Anti-Spell and you're playing Pendulums, it's an FTK. So like, I think this deck just got better, and it also just got like beyond the Pendulum, as I talked about in the last tier list video, which was like last week. But guys, I think Pendulum Magician's the real deal. Salamangreat, I think this is the top of tier 2. I think this is borderline tier 1. I had it in tier 1 last time, and people were like, hey, I agree that Salad's the best of the cyber strategies, but I don't think it's tier 1. I think you're probably right, but it has been performing like tier 1. It wins and tops tournaments like at a ridiculously, good conversion rate. And I don't, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this should just stay in tier 1 because its worst matchup in the meta was Flunder. And Flunder just got hurt. So this deck's only going to get better. This is tough. You know what? Okay, no. I'm going to leave it in tier 2. I'm going to leave it in tier 2 for the reason being that it doesn't win going second without hand traps very well. It can win, but it doesn't win very well doing it, where all these other decks can go first or second very, very easily. Salad cannot. Salad is very reliant on non-engine cards, and for that reason I think it's a little bit worse of a deck overall than these. But in the context of how this has been played, like, and how it's been performing, it is a tier 1 deck. But I'm going to put it back in tier 2. I will admit, stupid comment section was right. But yeah, anyways, moving on to Pure Scareclaw. Pure Scareclaw, this is a rogue deck. It's got access to some cool things, some cool combos, some cool plays, but it's not good enough right now. I don't know what it needs. I don't know if it's getting more support. I know we're getting the tier element stuff, which has synergy with it, but I don't know if Pure Scareclaw is getting more support. But yeah, this deck, ending on Tryhard, I think that's the Link 3's name. Ending on Tryhard is really, really good. It can also make Bagooska, which is good, but it doesn't seem to have that oomph that it needs. So we'll get to another version of Scareclaw in a little bit, which I think you guys will be happier with how I rank that. We got Sky Striker. I want to put Sky Striker at high potential. The reason being is I've always been putting this deck in Rogue, but with this format specifically, I think this deck's got some high potential because Flunder was very good against it, and now that's gone. This deck has a very solid matchup against Despia because you have multiple DD Crows, which is nice. And yeah, I think it's got some potential, this format. We also just got the buff we got the fix to how the end phase works for Sky Striker. You're gonna actually be able to like choose your links, your chain links properly and stuff like that to actually get use out of your multi-roll, which is nice. I believe it's multi-roll, which is really good for the deck. And we also have Widow Anchor at 3, so I think there's just, you know, a lot of potential here. It's also good against Despia and Sword Soul for the fact that like you have like so many effect veilers, right? So yeah, I think there's some high potential here, but I think this deck's ceiling is tier 2. I will say that, but I think it's probably going to wind up being in the tier 3 range or the top of Rogue. Bottom tier 3, top Rogue, but I think it could make it up to the top of tier 3, maybe tier 2, if we get some good players playing it. Spyral's been falling hard. This deck's been free falling, like it's no one's business, but I still think it's a tier 3 deck. I think if you design this deck to do just enough to win, you're going to see a lot more success than people are currently seeing. What I see with a lot of Spiral builds is people trying to do these crazy combos where they end on like some obscure floodgate or obscure board or obscure lock or whatever it is, when you don't need to do all that. Just end on your sleeper, end on your Appaloosa, maybe end on a negate in some form or fashion. You're good to go. Maybe with a Snow in the Grave, maybe with something like that. You're good to go. Maybe you set something back off, maybe you set a Floodgate off of Griffin, cool. But don't try to do everything with this deck, because doing everything makes it so you more often than not do nothing. Sometimes less is more. And that's, I think, why this deck's been struggling recently. But that is just my opinion. Sword Soul Tenyi. Sword Soul here, you could pick them. You could pick which way you want to put these, whether you want Sword Soul first or Despia first. I'm going to go with Despia just because I like Despia more than Sword Soul, to be honest with you. I think Sword Soul is clearly one of the best decks in the game, but I also think it's the most overrated deck, like, ever. Every time I play this deck, every time I play against this deck, I'm like, alright guys, I'm not seeing it. But then there's some times where you just like watch tournaments and you're like, dang, Sword Soul's dominating this tournament. There's like 5 in the top 16. There's like 3 or 4 in the top 8. It's like, dang. So this deck's just everywhere. But I don't know. Protoss is a god card. What can you say? Tri-Brigade Scareclaw. I'm going to put this at high potential. I think that you know what you're going to be getting with the Adventure Tri-Zoo deck, with the Tri-Zoo deck in general, but we don't know exactly what the ceiling is for Tri-Brigade Scareclaw. I think the ceiling is higher than the Tri-Zoo because we have access to Bagooska, we have access to Baron, we have access to the Tri-Heart thingy, which I guess the other deck does too. which I guess technically Tri-Zoo has access to that as well, which is really strong. But this deck kind of like is designed to make that and to make it really, really powerful. I really like this deck, honestly, guys. I think the ability to end on like a Baron, even a Herald of Arclight, a lot of different things this deck has access to. I think it's really, really powerful. I think it's really interesting, and I'd like to see what people end up doing with it. I might start testing this deck for real and bring you guys a deck profile, so let me know in the comment section below if you'd like to see that. But right now, I'm going to say high potential for Tri-Brigade Scareclaw. Clearly better than regular Scareclaw. I think this deck could end up being in tier 2. Tri-Brigade Lyrilusk, I think this is kind of a pick'em between Tri-Zoo and Bird Up, whichever one you want to play. I would say right now I would play Birds because Flu is worse. So, well, I guess that doesn't really change anything because this was a win deck. But I guess what I mean is, like, with Flu being worse, the more combo-centered decks are going to be better. And this is better into combo decks because it's also a combo deck. So, but I don't know. Anyway, the last but certainly not least, we got Umi Control. I'm going to put this better than regular Eldlich, Floodgate Eldlich, but worse than branded Eldlich. Because this deck doesn't do a lot going second. It doesn't really play going second. It only really has a kaiju, searchable kaiju, which is nice, as I talk about every time. But it doesn't really do that much. There was an interaction between like this deck and like Sword Soul, which was absolutely hilarious. I forgot exactly what it was, but it had something to do with like the Moyi being water. Oh, that's right. The Legendary Ocean changes the level of like all water monsters on the field and in the hand and in your hand or something like that. So like the Moyi, not the Moyi, the token becomes like level 5. And they just like can't synchro. So I thought that was kind of hilarious. But yeah, I don't know. This deck's not that good. It's interesting. It's fun to watch. It's not fun to watch because it's a control deck, but it's fun to like see something new come into the game. But I don't know. I think Rogue's a pretty good spot for it. It can catch people off guard, but in best of 3 side deck, it really struggles. But anyways, guys, that is going to do it for me. Thank you guys so much for tuning into the video. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And in that comment section, let me know what I got right, what I got wrong. I know some of my tiers are different than they were in the previous video, and it's only been like a week. But that's kind of just how like Yu-Gi-Oh goes. Like things just change, your opinions change. Like tournaments change your opinion of things. You see different things. You see things differently depending on the day. And on like as of today, this is where I think things land. But I do think a lot of shifts are going to happen over the course of the next month, and I think this tier list is going to be very, very different next time we take a look at it. But anyways, thank you guys so much for tuning into the video. The support rate recently has been absolutely insane, and it means the world to me. Yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.